Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now recently I did a game room tour of my brand new house, and to my surprise, I had over 4,000 comments on there and a ton of questions. So in this video, I thought I would do a follow-up of, say, the top 10 questions that most people had. Let's take a look. So the question I got most was about those display stands that I have for the handhelds, and I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't do a shout out to the company that makes those, because I've done it in the past and I love what they do. So I got all of those from a website called rosecoloredgaming.com. And I'm gonna put a link down in the video description below, so you don't have to remember that, but yeah, that's where these come from. And what's great about that site is that they do a lot of stuff. You can tell that there are some pretty passionate gamers and collectors, because you find stuff on that site that you would never find anywhere else. So for instance, you're gonna find stands for all the typical popular handhelds, all the Nintendo consoles, and of course, Sony consoles and things like that. But man, you will also find, as you see here, you'll find stands for like the Atari Lynx and the different versions of the Atari Lynx. You'll get stands for the Game Gear. Of course, you see the Neo Geo Pocket Color. They have everything. And what's cool is that they'll do special edition stands for special edition consoles. So if Nintendo puts out a Yoshi 3DS like you see here, well, they'll have a stand designed specifically for that if you want it. And they've also done some of their own kind of custom modded consoles, and of course created the stands for that. So it's a very cool site. Definitely check it out. And again, I'll put a link down in the video description below. The next question that I got a lot from people was just wanting more information about the LED lights that are in my room. And I thought I covered it okay, but in looking back on the video, I realized that, yeah, there's a lot going on here that I kind of want to dig a little bit deeper into. So like I mentioned in my tour video, half of my game room is running those Philips Hue lights, and then the other half are running cheaper Amazon kind of knockoffs, and I'm gonna explain why I did that. If you're not familiar with the Philips Hue lights, its big selling point is that when you buy a kit, it comes with this bridge that sits in your house that allows you to control up to 50 lights and program routines. So for instance, here is the app, and you can see here that I programmed it to wake up the lights that are running in my living room at 7:15 a.m. and then shut them off at 9 a.m. basically 5 days a week. You can also see that I programmed them to turn on at sunset every single day. Now what's cool is that sunset changes throughout the year, but again, these are smart, and so it knows exactly when sunset will be every single day all throughout the year. That's pretty cool. I also like the accessories that you can get for the Hue lights. So for instance, right here, you see a wall mounted switch that is completely programmable. So you can set it to 3 different color combinations, and all you have to do is just tap it. And then if you want to shut them off, well, you turn off the switch right there. You don't have to have your phone. You don't have to be walking around with it. But the downside to the Hue lights is that because they are so smart, they are kind of expensive. And so you'll pay, more than you would other colored LEDs. And to be fair, in the last, couple years, they've definitely come down in price, but overall, you kind of have to pick and choose where you're going to put them, because again, in my opinion, they are a little on the pricey side. And that's why on the other half of my game room, I just couldn't justify doing that, because they do sell rope programmable LED lights with the Hue lights, but again, they're so expensive, it just wouldn't have made sense. So instead, what I did is I went to Amazon and bought some, cheaper Chinese knockoffs that were way, way less expensive. So this string of LEDs right here are very long and relatively inexpensive. So depending on the size of your room and depending on the budget, you might go for either the Hue lights if you only need a few of them, or maybe if your budget is large. But over here you can get these for much, much cheaper, but you can't really program them to be smart like the Hue lights. So I'll put links down in the video description to all of this if you want to check them out. Next, I got a bunch of questions about my band's CD. It's funny because I didn't expect to get this kind of response, but it was cool that I did. So a lot of you were really surprised and interested in a lot of the original music that I've made over the last, couple decades. So this right here, what you're looking at is a CD that you could buy from the website mp3.com. This was back when mp3.com was the biggest news in the tech world, and we uploaded a lot of our original music to the site, and one of the options they had is that your fans could go there and buy your CD. And so you can see it right here. They actually made a real physical CD. It came, in the packaging. You were allowed to upload some photos. It was very legit and very cool. But sadly, I don't have a lot of this up there on the internet. And, I only have 7 songs right here on this disc, but actually I have probably 20 to 25 original songs that I could potentially upload. Although, a little spoiler, a little sneak preview, I started talking to a local record label here in Seattle last fall about potentially printing a kind of limited edition vinyl version of some of my music. So that's still in the planning stages, and I think that's actually going to happen. If it does happen, I will definitely share it on my website and my YouTube channel and all that stuff. So be on the lookout. As a content creator on YouTube, one of the really surprising things and fun things about it is that when people watch your videos, they notice the little things in the background, and that's exactly what happened right here. So many of you wanted to know, what is that weird NES cartridge in the background that has a screen on it? And I have to admit, I'm a little embarrassed because I intended to bring this up in my video and I completely spaced it because I just had so much going on in that video. But that is a really cool device created by a company called DNA Dimension Designs. And essentially what it is a modified NES cartridge that has an LCD built into it. And so it actually has, I believe, a version of Raspberry Pi inside the cartridge. And essentially what it is, it's just kind of one of, do you remember those smart photo albums that were kind of all the rage back in the 2000s? Everyone thought you would have this thing that you plug in and show family photos. Well, they kind of took that idea, but instead of showing family photos, it's showing full-size, perfectly sized color NES labels. So it runs through all the different NES cartridge labels on this screen. And I have to say, this thing is a total conversation piece when you have people over. Just a couple weeks ago, I had a bunch of the MJR crew over at my house, kind of doing a small little housewarming party. And I had this plugged in and set up on the bar. And people were just like, what the heck is that? It's so cool. I also love how they just configured this to simply work. You just plug it into the wall, it boots up, and it just runs forever. Now, I do want to say, though, is that this is a total custom job. This isn't mass-produced or anything like that, so it is a little bit on the pricey side. It's a little bit on the boutique pricing side, but if you're interested in checking one of these out, plus he's got a bunch of other stuff on his website that is really cool, really unique looking, I'll put a link down in the video description below. Here's a question that a lot of you ask, and that is, what's that game at the 10-second mark in my video? And this was really funny to get because I've used this gameplay footage in a couple of my videos, usually at the end, but people always want to know, what the heck is this game? Well, it is a game called Demon Front, and it is a side-scrolling run-and-gun game that only came out in arcades in 2002. And as you can see by this footage, it is very similar and quite possibly trying to emulate the Metal Slug series. But I gotta tell you, that's not a bad thing because this game is actually really well made. I definitely dig its art style, and it's cool that it also has a 2-player co-op mode. The only bummer is, as far as I can tell, it hasn't had a home console release in any format, which is just wild to me because obviously there's some interest in it, but yeah, it only came out in arcades. But now, if I'm wrong about that, if it's shown up in a compilation or something like that, or maybe on the digital eShop, please let me know because I know a lot of people want to play this game. A lot of you are very curious about the Japanese anime series that I showed called Bubblegum Crisis, because I mentioned in that video that I work for the company that published it here in the US. And so a lot of you were like, hey, did you actually work for, I think they're pronounced Animeigo? I don't know if that's actually correct or not, but the reason why I don't know how to pronounce that is because, no, I didn't actually work there. I worked for a very small DVD and software publisher called Multimedia 2000, and if you look on the back of the DVD, you see there's their logo and information. And that was a really wild time to be working at this small little publishing company in downtown Seattle. So, you know, in the past, I've mentioned to you guys that I used to review games professionally. Well, the place that I reviewed them professionally was Multimedia 2000. Actually, I got hired there to be basically like their support department, but then I got promoted to be their network administrator, working on servers and routers and all that sort of stuff. And part of that was they needed somebody to review games that were coming in on their website. And so they asked me to do that. The very first time that I ever went to E3 was through Multimedia 2000. Unfortunately, that company is no longer around. But yes, back in the day, they were one of the first US companies to have a pretty decent licensing agreement to put out this Japanese anime. And so this was sold in Best Buys and Circuit Cities and all over the place. It was sold in malls, and it was a very good seller for them. But unfortunately, it wasn't enough to keep them going in the long term. A lot of people wanted to know about the shelving that I have in my game room, and you know, I wish I could tell you it's some fancy brand or something like that, but actually I like it simple, I like it cheap, and this is all IKEA. Now, the pros about IKEA is that it's cheap, and the reason why it's cheap is because, well, it's pretty much particle board, and you have to assemble it yourself. And so, in this case, I ended up spending pretty much a solid week setting up all of these IKEA shelves, which, you know, is not going to be for everybody. I also like how they're simple, they're not ornate, and you know, the reason why I like that is because the focus should be on the games and what is actually in the shelving. I don't want all this fancy stuff to be around it. I just want it to be very simple, very elegant, you know, just make the games and stuff in them shine. The downside being, and you can see it here in this footage, is that some games fit better than others. I think actually the big box PC games fit pretty well because they're fairly large, but you know, then you look over here under PS2 or Switch or PlayStation 4, and it doesn't perfectly fit. I end up having to put some of them kind of, you know, sideways, or you know, the short end inside. It just doesn't look quite right. And again, it's like, well, the alternative would be is that I'd have custom shelving made, which I could do, but you know, I don't know. It's like, that would be very expensive because I'd have to pay somebody probably to do it because I'm not a carpenter, you know, and I just don't know if I care that much. Instead, it's just easier to go with something that I can very quickly buy and set up. Many of you were concerned and had questions about sunlight potentially damaging my games and cases that are in front of the window. And I do think that is a legitimate concern and one that I definitely take seriously. I guess to answer that question is that I try to be somewhat smart about how much of the windows I exposed. You'll notice in my office, the taller part is completely covering the window, and therefore I will never open those blinds, and so that should be okay. But then over near my my computer, well, that window does open, but again, the sunlight, if it streams in, isn't probably going to damage anything that I would have to worry about. In the main game room is where potentially I could have that problem. You know, I just moved into the house, and as of the making of this, well, it's the dead of winter, and I don't really plan on opening that window that often. I guess what I'm going to probably do is wait until summer to see exactly how much of that I actually allow into, you know, my game room. Because if you think about it, you can't really sit on the couch and play games with a bright light streaming in anyways. And so, you know, I don't anticipate a scenario where that window is open all the time. Now, several of you mentioned, and I didn't even really know this, that you can get film to cover windows that will cut out UV light. And so that's actually a really, really good idea, and I doubt it's very expensive. So in spaces that I'm concerned about, I might actually do that. So that was a really good suggestion. Many of you were kind of confused when I mentioned that I could hook up my N64 to my HD television. And in that statement, I was also talking about many of the other consoles that I have sitting over there. And you were like, hey, how would you do that? Well, if you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that one of my goals over the past couple years has been to get as many of my retro gaming consoles converted over to HDMI as possible. And for this exact reason, really, is to be able to play them on a modern television, but also to be able to capture footage for my YouTube channel. And so in the case of the N64, as well as some of the others like the Dreamcast, those have internal modifications that now output in glorious HD, and they look fantastic on the television, and there's no setup or no converters needed. But you've also had a lot of other companies create solutions for other consoles to make this relatively painless and inexpensive. So for instance, companies like HD Retrovision, you have Pound, you have Hyperkin. There's a bunch of them out there depending on your budget and the quality that you're looking for. And so as of right now, most of the systems that I would want to connect that maybe don't have native HDMI out, well, there is a solution for that. And I should also mention the RetroTink as well. So that is a fantastic device that will convert, pretty much any old signal to HDMI for you. And then finally, the most important question of all, I thought this was pretty funny. How many times did I say games in my game room tour? Well, it's funny you should ask, because I said it exactly 15 times. And the way that I know that, and the reason why I actually wanted to answer this question, is because many of you may not know this, but I actually do add and upload closed captioning to a lot of my videos. And so I actually use a service called rev.com, where you pay them to basically go and create transcriptions and closed captions that you can add to your videos, which I like to do for many reasons. But I thought this was a pretty funny question because they probably didn't know the answer, and I did. So I said it 15 times. All right, guys, well, that's a quick little follow-up video to my game room tour. And I want to thank you very much for watching that tour. It did extremely well for my channel, and a lot of people seem to really enjoy that. And a lot of people just ask me, it's like, hey, are you loving your new house and your game room? And yeah, it's awesome. So I am in gamer heaven here. And yeah, it was really cool to put out that video. And if you have any other questions that I haven't covered here, post them down below and I'll try to answer them. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching my channel. Thank you very much for subscribing, and take care.